Hello. I believe that when Warden does the Vortex in For Honor that the defending side has a small advantage, not a pretty big one. And I'm going to explain how that works, and I'm going to explain how you can turn somebody trying to Vortex you with Warden to your advantage. First, let's define the Vortex. Shoulder Charge is Warden's unblockable thing. When he hits you with it, he gets to follow up with another light, and because it's unblockable, you have to avoid it by dodging out of the way or by stuffing it with an attack, which in some cases is difficult. Shoulder Charge can come out of either a light, you can cancel any light into a shoulder charge, or it can come out of any dash. So especially if he's hit you with a light and then he cancels it into a shoulder charge, there's no way you can stuff that with an attack, so you have to dodge out of the way. Shoulder Charge doesn't have to finish. The Warden can feint it into nothing, and then he just stands there, or you can cancel it into a guard break at any time. If you dodge out of the way, you're dodging, and guard breaks in this game beat dodges very effectively. They'll just chase dodges to the ends of the earth and always catch recovery. Because of that, if the Warden cancels his shoulder charge into a guard break, it gives him either a light, which leads back into the vortex, a heavy attack, or theoretically he could ledge you, depending on positioning. Because all lights give Warden a non-combo shoulder charge, every time he hits you with a light, he leads back into the vortex, and because he hits you with a light off of both hitting with a shoulder charge or getting a guard break, then it leads back into itself. That's why it's called a vortex, because you're just kind of caught in it forever until you defend correctly. So how do you escape it? Well, there's two ways that are pretty much guaranteed to blow up both of these options. They'll blow up anything other than the Warden sitting there and doing nothing. And the blow up, I mean, you just get out. You don't actually get anything. The first is that you can roll out. You can either roll by unlocking and dodging, or you can dodge twice. Both of these options cost quite a lot of stamina, but no matter what the Warden does, you're safe. The second thing is that a side dodge attack will give you a light worth of damage, a little bit more in some cases, on all of classes with a side dodge attack. And by those I mean the assassins, and I think Kensei and Nobushi's is a little bit dicey. The dodge portion of the attack avoids a shoulder charge, and the attack goes active enough to beat the guard break, because attacks beat guard breaks in this game. In order to beat this, Warden has to feint his shoulder charge to nothing and parry, but then he gets a pretty decent punish most of the time. I don't think that you should use those options a lot of the time. I think as an assassin you should represent the side dash attack occasionally, but I think a lot of the time you should just guess into the vortex. I think rolling is usually a bad idea because rolling costs stamina, and side dodge attacks give you a lot less reward than guessing correctly in many cases. Additionally, not every class has a side dodge attack, and sometimes you just want to challenge it, you know? Sometimes you want to say, hey, if you're making us play a guessing game, then we're playing a guessing game, and I'm going to guess too. A Warden who's autopiloting, or who isn't as good at guessing as you are, will kill himself very quickly when you start to guess correctly. And guessing has favorable risk reward for you, because you're both guessing. It's a two-sided game, and you, in most cases, depending on class, win damage very slightly. If you side dodge and guard break, you can catch shoulder during recovery and guard break. It's worth noting that you do need to side dodge a little bit early, and in some cases you need to guard break a little bit late, otherwise you'll actually guard break into shoulder still being active. Shoulder lasts a very long time. I've got a bunch of footage of a bunch of classes punishing this, but every time I post it on the internet people say a bunch of ridiculous stuff, so just lab it out for yourself with a friend, practice the timing, figure out when you need to do it, and then you'll get a guard break every time the Warden does shoulder, if you guess shoulder. You get a lot of things after a guard break. One of the reasons why I think that this is so advantageous for the defender is because Warden's ledge game is kind of bad. So if you're playing like Warlord, for example, and you get a guard break here, a lot of the times the Warden just dies, 100%. In a Warden mirror, Warden can do side light into a vortex after this guard break, which is kind of funny. Any fast attack will beat the Warden canceling the shoulder into guard break. You can just press a button. Depending on class, if you have reasonably fast heavies, you can just do a heavy attack. Again, Warden can just do a side light here and go into the vortex on the other person if he wants to, if he successfully guesses, right, on a guard break. It's worth noting that if you guess wrong in either of these options, the Warden hits you, but the Warden will usually hit you for 26 and put you back into the vortex. If he's smart, sometimes he'll like do a heavy after a guard break if it'll kill, or he'll ledge you. So be reasonable, be cautious, and try to guess right. I realize that this is a silly thing to say, but be intelligent about your guessing. Think about what the warden has been doing as a player. Think about whether he's smart enough to vary his options. Think about his tendencies, and think about what he's done in high-pressure situations before, if you're in a high-pressure situation. Finally, if you stand there, like literally do nothing, and he cancels into a feint, then nobody has any advantage and you've completely tied. If you want to be really fancy and you know he's going to cancel into a feint, you can just feint a heavy, and he'll probably be looking for a parry. A number of people think that Warden can react to an early dash by canceling a shoulder charge into a guard break when he sees you dash. This is a thing that some people can do in some dash timings, but I believe that it is very important to make them prove it. The game has some amount of forced delay. There's some amount of delay because you're connected on the internet, and the game is stressful, and the Warden has to think about all the things you can do, especially if you're playing a class with a side dash attack. The Warden might have already thought he lost, He might not be trying to react with a guard break. He might not be thinking about reacting with a guard break when he enters the vortex. He might be autopiloting. He might think you're going to do something else, so he's not looking for it. Even if he can react, even if you're convinced that he can react, 6 classes in the game have things that they can do out of side dodge that beat the Warden reacting. In Lawbringer's case and in Raider's case, you don't get a lot of damage, but they will beat him reacting, and you get stamina damage, which is pretty non-trivial in this game. Or with everybody else, you get damage, and he can't react to that. Finally, if you're convinced that the Warden is a very good player, and you're convinced that he can react 100% of the time to you doing a side dash, then you can just roll out. You don't need to do what I'm suggesting. You don't need to try to play into his game and try to beat him at rock, paper, scissors. You can say, no, we're not playing, and just get out. So this is what a risk-reward table looks like. This is what happens based on what you choose. It's worth noting that if you attack into a feint and he's expecting it, you get blown up. If you attack into a feint and he's just blocking, especially if you do a light, not a lot happens. Similarly, if you side dodge guard break into him feinting and doing nothing, then he can, in some situations, react and blow you up. But a lot of the time, he's just going to attack the guard break, and then nobody has a lot of advantage. If you both do nothing, again, nobody has a lot of advantage. If you do nothing and he cancels into guard break, nobody has a lot of advantage. You'll probably just tech it. If you notice that in a lot of these cases, notably when he actually does the shoulder, he only gets a light, whereas if you side dodge, you get a light or a heavy or a ledge, because you get all of those options off of guard break. I mean, in some cases, you get even more than that off of guard break. If you're playing Shigoki and you can throw him into a wall and you're at critical health, he dies. If you're playing Shigoki and you can throw him to a wall and you're not at critical health, there's a really big health swing going on because you heal and the Warden takes a bunch of damage. The most damaging thing that the Warden could do is he could guard break and call out your side dodge, in which case he theoretically can do a heavy or can ledge you. I think that him going back to the vortex is in many cases not advantageous to him. Finally, side dodge attacks only lose if the Warden feints and does nothing, but if the Warden feints and does nothing, he gets a relatively heavy punish because he gets to parry it. Warden gets about the same amount of damage as the other guy in most of these options. Warden loses a little bit because the defender can do a heavy in a lot of these options, and Warden is limited to only doing lights off of connected shoulder. In a situation where ledging is a threat, I am a very firm believer that vortexing is only a good idea if the other class has a worse ledge game than Warden. That means, like against Peacekeeper, for example. Peacekeeper has a terrible ledge game. Against a Warlord, you want to be very careful when you do the vortex, because if he calls out one shoulder charge right, then the Warden's getting ledged, and that's a really bad idea. I think that good Wardens will very frequently feint, because at the very least it takes you back to neutral, it takes you back to a muddy situation, and if you're good at the game, you're good at playing neutral. So you want to be in that situation where you can just blow the other guy up, playing the game. Finally, whenever you are out of stamina, the Warden should vortex you, and he will vortex you, because beating the vortex becomes very difficult, and out of stamina light will still blow up a guard break, and you can still side dodge and sometimes get a guard break, although guard breaks are a little bit slower if he actually does a shoulder, but you get so little damage on those that it's super advantageous for the Warden. Shoulder charge can be held, and this actually changes things a lot, but most wardens don't seem to do this. When shoulder charge is held for too long, you start to be able to stuff it with a light, but if shoulder charge is held for a while, if you predict and you dodge too early, it will catch the dodge. It has a lot of weird interactions with a lot of options. Finally, if Warden holds the shoulder charge for a while, it starts pushing the other person back, and it can push the other person back out of light range, especially if they're far away to begin with. If you react to a shoulder charge and you dodge at the appropriate time, you always get a guard break, no matter what class you're playing, if you dodge at the appropriate time. He can still cancel a held shoulder charge, though. He can either feint it, or he can cancel it directly into a guard break. Again, you can stuff it with an attack if he holds it for a long time. And some really dumb things happen if you roll backwards, depending on where you are on the screen. If you roll into a corner and stuff based on spacing, most of the time you can't follow that up, though. If he holds it long enough, it starts to have armor, and it actually has a lot of hits of armor, but you can deal damage to him when he has armor, so this gets kind of muddy. In the Warden Mirror, for example, if he just does a max hold shoulder charge, and you do, 2 lights into it, you get 26 damage, and he gets 26 damage. Although he actually probably doesn't get anything because he held it for that long. So some things get dicey. And it doesn't really track particularly well, but it definitely can in some instances beat a side dodge attack. Usually it loses, but sometimes it can. So this changes a couple of things. If the Warden that you're playing demonstrates that he's willing to hold a shoulder charge, that he knows the option exists, and that he thinks that it'll beat what you're doing, then you need to react and dodge late if you're trying to dodge it. If you expect a late guard break, then you need to reevaluate the options that you're doing, because in some cases, he can actually armor through your light and then guard break you, or armor through your heavy and then guard break you. Finally, you should be cautious of your spacing, and you should be wary of rolling out when you're in the corner, and you should think about making a guess. I don't personally think that... well, you should especially be wary of rolling out backwards. So this is a table with all the options. Bear in mind that 3 of these options are shoulder charge, and 2 of these options are guard break cancel. So, for example, Warden actually doing a shoulder charge will always blow you up if you do a heavy. That's not necessarily interesting news. The biggest thing to come out of this table, I think, is that if you do a predictive light, because you're expecting him to do a guard break, and he kind of does a medium shoulder charge, you do really well. And if you hold shoulder charge until armor, you still get some damage. Some people may be able to react to him beginning to move with a fastest shoulder charge, so you can say, hey, I'm going to react to when he's going to move, and delay your guard break until then, and in that case you're going to beat all shoulder charges with that delay guard break. Other people are going to have a difficult time reacting to actually watching his feet and waiting until he moves in a real game. A couple of other notes. Predicted light does weird things if he holds it until armor. As I mentioned, if you're playing a class that gets a lot of damage off of a light, like Orochi or Warden, you'll very frequently win the damage trade, and he very frequently won't get anything at all. But in some cases, he'll just blow you up, and in some cases you are close enough that he can convert. Yeah, that's pretty much the other big change. And the final thing about this is that once Warden demonstrates that he's willing to hold shoulder charges, you should adjust your options too. You should say, okay, you're going to do this. Stop trying to heavy guard breaks, so that you accidentally start catching slower shoulder charges with your light. Make sure that you're not doing side dodge at stupid timings, and adjust your side dodge timing based on what he's doing and based on what you see he's doing. Start reacting. And overall, it's always a good idea to adjust your guesses based on what he does. This is definitely a game of rock, paper, scissors, and most people don't represent options evenly. Most people have patterns. Most people are very exploitable if you're willing to think about what's going on with the guessing game. Finally, long-range shoulder charge pushes people out very far, so if you think he's going to charge it, and when he does start charging it, start moving backwards. And adjusting your spacing, and make extra sure that you're not in a corner or against a wall where that's not possible. Okay, so all that said, again, I think the defender wins for all of those reasons. The defender wins damage a little bit, but Warden should definitely vortex you sometimes, even when the defender wins damage. The most important time is if you're out of stamina. Warden should always Vortex you, because it's very difficult to guess correctly and get meaningfully rewarded when you're out of stamina. You can't roll, you can't do a side dodge attack, and attacking into a guard break becomes extra risky because your attacks have extra startup, you don't get damage off of it, and it's very easy to parry you. You can't feint when you're out of stamina. So, the Warden just feints the shoulder charge and says, ha ha ha, parries, and gets mad damage because you're out of stamina, you fall down, and he gets a very big punish. Whenever the Warden knows what he's going to do, or he's confident in your guessing game, in his guessing game, then he should do a Vortex. If, for example, you do a side dodge and you try to grab him every time, then the Warden should absolutely continue trying to Vortex you and continue trying to blow up that side dodge until you prove that you can punish. That's the next thing on the list. If you haven't proven that you can do anything meaningful to the Warden Vortex, the Warden should continue to Vortex. This is why rolling out is bad, because the Warden will continue to do it. You're not putting any fear into the Warden when you roll out. You're not proving that you can punish. Finally, the Warden should always Vortex when he needs to open you up in a short amount of time. The Vortex, at the very least, even if it's faintly disadvantageous, it forces a guessing game. And that means that if somebody's going to die in most like elimination, a lot of the times finishing your duel slowly, even if you win, can be very disadvantageous because everybody else in your team dies, or 7 peacekeepers all pick up the attack buff and start top-heaving you in the butt. And that's bad. So hopefully this is helpful. If you want, you can press some of the buttons at the bottom of the video. If a bunch of people tell me to, then I'll add some game footage to this, but again, most of the time when I upload game footage, people just tell me that it's garbage, even though it's not. So please test this for yourself. Test when the dodge timings are. Test your class getting a guard break. Everybody gets it. Lawbringer gets it. Warlord gets it. Warden gets it. Everybody gets it. And test what heavies blow up guard break. For example, with Warlord, only lights blow up guard break, which is a little bit poop, but you still get a light there, and your ledge game is so good that the other option is insane. So test all that stuff.